Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, District Energy in Tandem, Mississauga. I'm Desi from Cleaner Partnership, and I'll be your host today. And our guest presenters are Teresa Chan from City of Mississauga and Niall Pigeon from FFB Energy, and they'll introduce themselves shortly. I wanted to start with land acknowledgement. Cleaner Partnership is a Toronto-based organization, and we acknowledge that the land on which we operate is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I also wanted to draw your attention on our newly tool, the Climate Policy Database. Here we track climate-related policies across the CAC municipalities. And now it is easier to see and access those policies. Hence, we are trying to enhance the transparency of action taken within the CAC network. I will share a link to the Climate Policy Database shortly. Lastly, these are our upcoming events. Tomorrow, we are going to talk about Municipal Role in Ontario's energy transition at 10 a.m. And on November 8th, we are going to talk about embodied carbon, state of supply chain, transparency, and tools to streamline embodied carbon considerations. If you want to stay tuned for our upcoming events, please subscribe to our newsletter, and I'll share a link to that as well in the chat shortly. But now I want to start the official part of the webinar and give the word to Niall Pigeon from FFB Energy. Niall, take it away.
Thanks, Desi. I will share my screen.
Meanwhile, I want to encourage everyone to ask your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll be monitoring. After Niall's presentation, we'll have shortly a Q&A if there's specific questions to him. Otherwise, we'll follow with Teresa's presentation, and then we aim for a 15 to 10 minutes Q&A session at the end of the after the presentation at the end of the webinar. With that, take it away, Niall.
Thanks, Desi. Good morning, all. My name is Niall Pigeon, and I'm a project manager with FVB Energy. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today presenting to you all in District Energy Ontario, and moreover, low carbon district energy systems. I had the pleasure of working with Teresa and the City of Mississauga and all stakeholders over the last 2 years on this exciting project, and Teresa will cover this project in her presentation next. Over the next 15 minutes, I will cover FVB and district energy, the evolution of district energy systems in Canada, show 2 district energy case studies in Ontario, and finally showcase 3 upcoming district energy projects which FVB have helped develop. FVB Energy is a leading engineering consulting firm providing innovative solutions specialized in district energy. We bring over 50 years of experience to district energy projects around the world. Our purpose is focused on creating sustainable energy solutions that provide clients with tangible results and assist them with achieving their greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets through district energy. FVB has 17 offices across Canada, the US, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. FVB Energy is a full-service consulting engineering firm who specialize in all aspects of district energy, from the inception of the project through a feasibility study, right through to design, construction, commissioning support, and ongoing operational support of the developed district energy system. As we all know too well, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to global warming and is causing more extreme weather conditions, such as droughts and major flooding events. We have witnessed this firsthand this summer in North America and Europe based on the extreme drought and record-setting heat in 2023. As noted in the United Nations publication on district energy in cities 2015 report, district energy is one of the least cost and most efficient solutions for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and primary energy demand. This figure shows a district energy system graphic where different technologies can be connected to the district energy system at scale. Once a district energy thermal network is established and there is engageable thermal heating and cooling load from customers, for example, offices, condominiums, malls, data centers, all have different heating and cooling thermal load profiles. On this basis, the thermal energy network can be used to share energy at scale. This cannot be done at a building by building basis. I will touch on this in more detail in the presentation with an example of how this is currently being implemented by Markham District Energy. Renewable energies such as wind, biomass, solar, geothermal, and industrial waste heat can be plugged into the district energy system at scale. District energy systems can implement large-scale, low-carbon solutions with greater economies of scale than building solutions. District energy can evolve as new greenhouse gas emissions targets are introduced and new buildings are connected. One of the oldest district energy systems was constructed in 1880 in London, Ontario. The most common application of district energy and cooling in North America is in university, military, government, and industrial campuses. Since 1990, there has been a significant growth in commercially operated systems in cities including Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Markham, and Vancouver, to name a few. Many legacy district steam systems are currently undergoing steam to hot water conversions. New district energy systems utilize lower hot water supply temperatures. District energy systems enables low carbon technologies to be deployed at scale. The figure on the right shows how district heating systems have evolved from district steam systems to a lower temperature hot water system over the years. District energy systems are operational throughout Ontario in municipalities, universities, airports, government institutions. Currently, systems are split between using steam and hot water for district heating. Existing steam systems are now being converted to hot water based on efficiencies. New district energy systems are trending to that lower hot water supply temperature, as shown on the previous slide. Markham District Energy provides heating and cooling to approximately 13 million square feet of connected buildings, and the system is steadily growing annually. There is over 50 kilometers of buried district heating and cooling pipes in the ground. Rapid expansion is planned in Markham in the coming years, and MDE has a target of net zero by 2050. Some notable low carbon projects currently underway to achieve this are a 4 megawatt heat recovery heat pump, which will recover waste heat from the cooling system and put it back into the district heating system, a half a megawatt of biomass pellet boiler capacity, and 18 megawatts of wastewater energy transfer from the sewer. The major point to note here is net zero will be achieved without any impact to the customer buildings. This is the benefit of the thermal grid created. So by swapping out the heating and cooling generation equipment, the energy center by default, all these older buildings connected to the district energy system benefit immediately by the decarbonization process back at the central plant. So nothing has to be done in these older buildings connected to the district energy system, as it's all being done back at the central plant. The existing steam system in downtown Ottawa serves about 21 million feet squared of buildings, with 4 energy centres, and about 80 buildings are connected. There's about 17 kilometres of hot water and 15 kilometres of chilled water piping infrastructure. The system is currently being modernized to increase the system efficiency and incorporate low carbon technologies. The district steam system is being converted from steam to low temperature hot water. The district energy system will include river water cooling, 30 megawatts of electric boiler capacity, and then the next phase of the project will be carbon neutrality. The modernization of the energy system is currently in construction by Innovate Energy. The left image shows Confederation Heights Energy Centre with new additions to the roof. The right image shows the concept rendering of the redeveloped Cliff Energy Centre that would be integrated into the landscape surrounding the Ottawa River near the Parliament buildings. Several district energy systems are currently in feasibility, design, implementation, and construction throughout Ontario. In the next slides, I will cover Lakeview District Energy System in Mississauga, Etobicoke Civic Centre in Toronto, and a downtown Kitchener District Energy System feasibility study. The Mississauga downtown core will be covered by Teresa in the next presentation. Many other clients and systems are in the process of performing feasibility studies to assess the viability of district energy for their communities, and other systems are being developed, not mentioned here in Ontario. Lakeview is a development on Mississauga's lakeshore that will include a new district energy system serving a densely populated new neighbourhood. All buildings in the development are planned to be connected to the district energy system. The low carbon energy source will extract energy from the GE Booth wastewater treatment plant, as shown here in the picture on the right. The district energy system is currently in development by Enwave. The new Etobicoke Civic Centre will be the cornerstone of a new community in Toronto. The Etobicoke Civic Centre will serve as an anchor for this new community and will also house a new geothermal district energy plant to provide heating and cooling to the surrounding blocks. The development is being constructed to Toronto Green Standards V3 Tier 4. The district energy system is currently being developed by Enwave. Kitchener 2 is experiencing a period of rapid development and has targets to achieve net zero by 2050. FVB conducted a feasibility study that showed significant potential for a low carbon district energy system that would provide heating and cooling to existing city buildings as well as new developments on city owned land. Kitchener is uniquely situated to allow for the use of open loop geo-exchange, where water from an underground aquifer can be extracted, passed through heat exchangers, and then rejected back into the aquifer. This water has a consistent year-round temperature, making it efficient for use in both heating and cooling, approximately 8 degrees Celsius all year round. The projected gross floor area of potential connected, new and existing buildings is approximately 11.5 million square feet, with the potential size of the system could be over 36 megawatts heating capacity and approximately 11,400 tons of cooling at full build out. Thank you all for your time. We look forward to hearing from any of you who have a district energy project which you are looking to develop. Please reach out. Now I will hand it over to Teresa to present on hopefully the next big low carbon district energy project in downtown Mississauga.
Thanks, Niall. If you have any questions to the audience, you can raise your hand and we can ask, or put it in the Q&A. We can keep the questions also for after Teresa's presentation. But very quickly, two that came up. The first one is, yes, we will be sharing the slides and the recording of the presentation. And the other one, now that I would like to ask you is like, can district energy happen in every municipalities, or are there specific areas or neighborhoods where district energy is impossible, or similarly would be of most valuable?
Generally, district energy systems are established in areas of high densification. So it's ideally suited for downtown cores where you have a lot of densification of buildings, where you have sparse community of single family housing. In the North American market, it's not suitable to connect them to district energy system. In Europe, these systems can be connected. But to answer your question, it would be mostly in densely populated centers where district energy is most economically viable. And especially if there's a new development being considered over a certain square foot, then district energy should be considered in the range of 500 to 1,000 square feet over multiple towers.
Right. Let's do one more question and then we're going to move to Teresa. But is there requirements, or are district energy do they need to be linked with somehow a backup to a natural gas, or to, let's say, non-renewable, or to electricity system, or can it be fully renewable energy?
So the premise of district energy is multiple energy sources. So if one goes down, there's resiliency. So typically district energy systems have a diversified heating and cooling generation. Sometimes they have backup power as well. So with the low carbon systems that we're seeing and developing, some will have natural gas boilers for peaking or resiliency. So the typical district energy system will have multiple heating and cooling generation assets back at the central plant, natural gas, electric, and so on.
Okay, thank you. There's just a question that came up now, but are there publicly available cost benefits data that could be used by publicly stakeholders to evaluate potential costs, timelines, cost of carbon savings?
So it's driven primarily by the cost of construction. So within Ontario, we have different construction costs throughout, and different energy markets, if you will. So typically, there are feasibility studies on district energy available, published, and will give some high level capital numbers. But ideally, you would want to do a specific study for that particular opportunity.
Right. I don't know if that's going to be shared in Teresa's presentation about the general cost, but maybe let's hear from Teresa, and then, but there are more questions coming up, but let's hear from Teresa, and then we're going to go back to Q&A.
Great, thanks Desi, and thanks Niall for laying the groundwork and doing all the heavy lifting. So I'm going to turn now to talk in particular about a project that we have in Mississauga right now. Okay, does that show up, Desi, okay?
Yep, all good.
Perfect. Okay, so before I sort of dive into things, I just wanted to give you an overview of what I'm going to cover today. I wanted to start out with a bit of background on district energy in Mississauga. I think it just gives a little bit of context about how we've moved forward and how we ended up where we are today. And then I'm going to jump into the feasibility study, looking at the objectives and the results, and then the recommended next steps that FEB identified. And then finally, I'm going to end on some of the lessons that we've learned so far to date. So just taking a step back and talking a little bit about district energy in Mississauga, the first mention I've seen of it is back in 2009. It was included as a strategic action for future consideration. So well over a decade now ago, we were thinking about district energy in the city, but it was in 2013 when a screening study was completed. So there was a broad look at the city, and there was an identification of the top nodes for district energy. So for example, as Niall mentioned, you're kind of looking for areas with a densely populated, so that there are lots of buildings, lots of variety of loads. So that's what this study was looking at. And so this was completed back in 2013, and there was a number of candidates that were identified as potential candidates for district energy in the system, in the city. And among all of those, the downtown ranked the first. And there was a number of reasons for that, but one of them was the density in the downtown. Another is that there's a key anchor client, meaning that one that is going to always need a load, some energy, some heating and cooling, and that's the Square One shopping center, which you can see there right in the middle, number 9. And then also the significance of this area, it being the downtown core. That was another reason identified as to why it was ranked first. Now, we sat on that screening study for quite some time, but I think that we were quite aware of that study when we were developing the Climate Change Action Plan. And we were aware of the results and the fact that the downtown was identified as the top candidate for district energy. And it was for that reason that we included an action in our Climate Change Action Plan to complete a feasibility study for district energy in the downtown. After the approval of that plan, we did a number of different things in order to lay the groundwork for the start of that feasibility study, including putting together a working group, which includes both internal and external stakeholders. And so, for example, on the external side, we have some of the property owners in the downtown and also the utilities, Metrolinx, and then a representation from across the city as well. So we got that working group together. We started working, and we also applied for some funding. So in the early part of 2021, we found out that we were successful in receiving some funding from the Atmospheric Fund, and so we were able to start in on this project and hire FEB and start in on the feasibility study in August of 2021. So we had a number of aims for this feasibility study, and to just sort of put them at a very high level here. But first being that we wanted to develop heating and cooling demand and an energy profile for the district energy system. So that included things like defining the study area for the system, looking at what the potential demand was for existing, but also for new builds that we knew were coming along. The second thing we wanted to do was create a conceptual design for the DE system. So understanding where we could put the central plant, where we could put the piping, and of course, very importantly, looking at the business case, and then finally also outlining different ownership models and the potential role for a city in any district energy system. So we worked on this feasibility study and had a draft at the end of last year and ended up finalizing it at the beginning part of this year. And this is the results of that study and what FEB recommended. So FEB recommended that this system be built out over 6 phases. So each phase taking 5 years to complete, so 30 years for the entire system to be built out. And then FEB recommended that the first phase be further subdivided into phase 1A and phase 1B, with phase 1A focusing just on city buildings and Sheridan buildings. The idea being that there's the most amount of control over those buildings, being that they're city buildings, and Sheridan being Sheridan College, who have district energy ready buildings and are also very much on board for low carbon heating and cooling. So for our phase 1, our main source or source of low carbon energy for the system is geo-exchange. Future phases consider other low carbon sources of energy, including sewer heat recovery, as well as electric boilers. So as you can see at the bottom here, this is a very sort of high level cost estimate for the entire system. You can see it's not a cheap system, roughly $400 million, but those are in 2022 dollars. And I think even with over the past year in terms of inflation, I'm sure those numbers have inched upward as well. And again, this is a very high level estimate. So just to give you a sense of the different phases that we're talking about here, this is the map, a map of downtown Mississauga. And I think it's probably a little challenging for you to probably orient yourself here, particularly if you're not familiar with Mississauga, but right in the middle there, that's the number 9 from the screening study. That's Square One. So it takes up a significant part. This mall takes up a significant part of our downtown. It's right at the center of our downtown. But to the west of that, in this kind of bluey color here, there are the 3 city buildings I'm not sure if you can see this, but there's a Burnhamthorpe Road along here, and the three city buildings are our central library, our city hall, and our living arts center. And then the north of those city buildings, we have the Sheridan College buildings. And the ones that are the areas here that are highlighted in green are the areas where we think we will be putting the geothermal boreholes. So as someone who works on climate change, this is my favorite slide, which is the one that focuses in on what our decreases to greenhouse gases look like. And so what the feasibility study showed is that this low carbon DE system has the potential to decrease greenhouse gases around 90% compared to a business as usual standalone system. And also importantly, that this system has a positive business case. And I should state that this is over the full build out, so not particular phases of the project, but at full build out around a 90% decrease in greenhouse gases and a positive business case. So FEB also identified a number of next steps that they recommended, including exploring the development of a City of Mississauga standard for new buildings to be DE ready. And one thought was to explore that through our upcoming green development standard, which is in hoping that we are going to have that in place either the end of this year or early next year. Also working to further develop a phase 1A design, and then also looking at detailed drawings and developing detailed drawings of the DE corridor for municipal roads and rights of way. So for those of you who deal in rights of ways, you know, the space is quite prized. And so the idea is that we could put together a cross section that could apply for new developments. And in Mississauga, there aren't a lot of opportunities for that, but also for places where there are already existing buildings and lots of infrastructure in the road already. And then, of course, continued engagement with all relevant stakeholders. So we, as I mentioned, finished this feasibility study up in the beginning part of 2023. And at that time, our leadership team did give us the go ahead to move on to those next steps. So those next steps that I identified in the last slide, we have been moving on all 4 of those recommendations since July of this year, when after just some procurement issues that we had to work our way through, we did start in on this phase. And the goal is to have this work, those next steps completed by the early part of 2024. So just finally, in my final slide on this, I just wanted to turn to some of the lessons learned so far on this. I'm sure there's going to be many more as we continue to move forward. But I think really importantly, the first is that this feasibility study showed that district energy has the potential to decrease GHGs significantly from our downtown buildings. And I think that's really important for a number of reasons. But I think it's also really important for us as we're working towards updating our climate change action plan and trying to determine how we're going to reach our climate targets. And district energy is really coming to the top as one of those technologies that we will need to rely on in order to reach our climate targets. Also, one of the things that I learned, at least from this part of the project, was that city involvement is needed to move DE forward in the downtown. Now, I think that city involvement is needed in some projects and not others. I think it's specifically needed here in the downtown for a few reasons. I just want to contrast that in relation to a project that Niall mentioned, which is district energy down at Lakeview Village, which is a new development along Mississauga's waterfront. Now that district energy system there that's being developed is being driven by the private sector. But the difference in the downtown is that there are a number of different owners in the downtown of the property. So there's no one particular property owner that has the impetus to want to drive district energy forward. So we know that if we need to drive it forward, that there's going to be needed some involvement from the city. So far, it's a feasibility study and us moving on to that next phase of work. I'm not sure how long we're going to be needed to be involved in the system, if it's a short-term or long-term prospect, but I know that for now that our involvement is needed to move forward. This is probably a point everyone quite knows, but everyone needs to be on board in order to move district energy forward. There's lots of different city teams involved in this. And each of them have their own priorities and concerns. And so, the priorities and concerns related to district energy might not float up to the top of their lists. And also that's true of the external folks involved as well. We've got lots of different property owners with lots of different interests and ways of going about reaching their goals. And so trying to bring everyone together is a challenge. And related to this, it's effective outreach takes time and a variety of approaches. We do, as I mentioned, have this working group, which has been really good about being able to inform a large group of folks about what's going on. But I do find that the group is quite quiet. No one likes to really talk in those meetings. So we do follow up most of those meetings with one-on-one discussions with individual working group members so that we can really check the pulse of those working group members and see what their concerns and questions are. Also, continued education is needed. For many, district energy is a new concept, and sometimes you have to do a little primer at the beginning of a presentation, no matter how many times you've done that primer before. And we're always looking for new ways to provide that education, whether it be right at the beginning of a presentation, taking folks on tours of district energy systems, or co-hosting webinars. We're always looking for new ways to try and get these concepts out to folks across the corporation, but also in the community as well. And just a final point here in terms of lessons learned, which is that really it's helpful to be in touch with your municipal counterparts. I know that from my perspective, the City of Toronto has been hugely helpful in helping me learn about district energy and helping me with various different things, various concerns, challenges, questions, but also on a very practical level, also with things like RFPs. They shared an RFP with me that I borrowed from heavily in order to put out an RFP for the district energy advisor services. So I will say that I've been very lucky in terms of getting their help. And so I offer the same thing out to you. If you have any questions, if there's any way that I can help you, certainly feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help if I can. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and hand things back to Desi.
Thanks so much, Teresa. And yeah, we can just move to the Q&A session. We have a lot questions coming up, and I also want to encourage, if someone wants to ask a question verbally, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute it. Thank you so much for your last message, because that's something that we encourage a lot at the Clean Air Council, and the sharing. We don't need to invent the wheel, and like the sharing of request for proposal, it's been very useful for variety of project, but generally to reduce time of staff that works on that. Okay, I'm jumping on to questions, and one that first came in my mind, and I see it now here as well, is the City of Mississauga planning to develop the DE system in the downtown core as a city-owned utility, or like who is going to be owning the district energy, and then later on responding to maintenance that is required, for example?
Yeah, and I think this is going to be an answer that is not that helpful, but I think right now that's to be determined. I think this next phase is going to be important in determining that. And because this phase 1A is just city and Sheridan buildings, it may make sense for the city to have an ownership stake or 100% ownership stake in this. But of course, that's going to be dependent on a number of factors, including how we can get financing for this district energy system. But I would say at this point in time, all options are open.
Which is a great segue to the next question, which is about the financing. And you mentioned that you had support for the feasibility study from TAF. Is that something that other municipalities can also tap in? Is this is that still available opportunity, or are you, and now please, if you have any information, jump in, is there any grants available also for feasibility study for district energies?
Yeah, I know when we applied to TAF, they were very interested in helping with district energy. I'm not sure if anything has evolved since then. So it certainly would be worth it to check in with them to see. I know that they're going to have, I think, 3 granting cycles in 2024. So it's a good opportunity to reach out. I know FCM was also another potential opportunity as well for money for feasibility studies. And I know others have applied to them and been successful in getting money for that. In terms of granting it at sort of a larger level in terms of funding the system itself, which is the bigger piece. Oh, I should note also in regards to the feasibility study that we did get some capital funds as well from the city in order to move forward. It wasn't just TAF funds, but that was helpful to get the TAF funds and to help supplement what we got from the city budget. But there's a lot of different things that we're looking at for potential funding sources for the system itself, looking at phase 1A in particular right now, including a federal granting opportunity, looking potentially to the private sector. There's lots of different things that we're thinking about right now, and we're trying to develop all of those at this moment.
Thank you, Teresa. Moving to the next question. I think you touched base a little bit, and I don't think we know at this point, maybe now from previous experience, but how invasive is to install the geothermal system in downtown core of a municipality?
Yeah, so in the Ontario market currently, there is an increased demand in geo exchange. So typically in Toronto, Mississauga, condominiums will go up with geo exchange beneath the building. So an actual building will be built on top of this. And this is becoming more common practice in the Ontario or the Greater Toronto area market. So it's possible to put the geo exchange beneath a building and then coordinate all the foundation work, plumbing work, and so on with it. So that would be the proposed location for the first geo exchange field. So beneath the purpose-built, potentially multi-use energy center. Then the next location would be in green spaces. And Teresa and myself, we've worked with the Parks Department in the city of Mississauga to look at how an existing green space can be potentially utilized as a heat source or sink with geo exchange. So particularly in this project in Square One, there's Community Commons Park, which is a park at the moment. So that's possible to be used for geo exchange. This has been done in University of Toronto as well in the St. George campus. So it's starting to become more common, but again, a lot of issues and coordination to be worked through to get in a position to put geo exchange in a municipally owned park.
And just to clarify, when you use a green space, it's everything, you keep the green space, right? It's not destruction of the green space. Yes.
Yeah. So Community Commons Park, for example, it's an open green space at the moment. During the construction period, which could be 3 to 6 months, it would be out of bounds. But once it's completed, it would be constructed back to its previous. The only thing you might see would be a small typical manhole that you'd see on a road, but the green space will be reinstated after 3 to 6 months.
Right.
I should say on that. Oh, sorry, Desi.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that too. I mean, obviously, I think some of you probably are thinking, "Oh, how are we going to broach this with our Parks Department?" But we are sort of discussing this, and I think there are some of the concerns there, like will that limit them from certain uses in the future and those sorts of things. So we're definitely working through those issues and seeing how we can also future-proof it if needed, if there does need to be a change. Like right now, it's being used for a particular purpose, but that might evolve over time. And I'll just say too that in Mississauga's downtown, and speaking of geothermal, there is a building going up right now where they've got geothermal under the building. So it is even happening in our downtown already.
Right. The next question is kind of linked here, but similar to N-Wave system, using the Ontario Lake water, it's feasible to use in Mississauga City downtown?
Yeah, so to answer the question, yes, it is feasible, but essentially it's going back to what I previously presented is you need to develop this thermal energy network grid to enable you to get that low carbon deep lake cooling or waste heat energy. So important thing is develop the heat network and then the technologies can be plugged and played into the grid. So this is obviously the hard part, the capital intensive part, trying to get all the stakeholders, the LDCs, the utilities, landowners, developers, municipalities, everyone at the table to try to make the project happen. So that's where we are.
Yeah. And also, I just throw in there too, I mean, one of the things that might need to be considered is cost. There may be cheaper technologies that are available. So I think all of that would have to be weighed. You know, something might be feasible, but when you're considering all the various factors that go into it, including cost, disruptions, and those sorts of things, it may not be the best choice.
Exactly. And the biggest cost with district energy systems typically is the district energy piping aspect of it. So that comes back to, you know, district energy is more, you know, better suited for that densely
Right. Now, I think you're cutting a little bit. Is that just me, or Teresa, do you experience the same? Okay.
Yeah, I think he's a little frozen there. Yeah.
Maybe now try to turn off your video so that we can hear you. Meanwhile, we can continue with the next question, and now just be more careful of to be focused with something that Teresa can answer. This one, are any district energy systems developed or run in collaboration with Ontario Power Generation? I guess this is for now questions, but maybe to you, Teresa, is Ontario Power Generation at all on the table when you're discussing the Mississauga's project?
They have not been at the table for the projects I've been working on. Niall might be able to talk about other projects, but yeah, no, it's and I will say in Mississauga, there is a district energy system at UTM, the University of Toronto, Mississauga, but otherwise there aren't district energy projects that are up and going in Mississauga. As I mentioned, there's one that is being developed down at Lakeview, and we're also working on this one in the downtown, but these would be the first systems outside of the university setting.
Right. Thanks. Now, are you back? You can. I see you.
Yeah,
moving.
just an issue there. Back.
No problem. Yeah. Now you're double on my screen, but that's great. More people. We are talking about are any of the projects in that with district energy projects involved collaboration with Ontario Power Generation. But I can move to the next question, which is, I think, also towards you. Are there examples of district energy systems for greenfield development areas, particularly planned higher density areas with larger public capital investments, like regional GO train stations?
Where the capital is for regional GO capital investment?
Like the regional GO train station. So if it's a larger public capital investment.
So not to my knowledge, but again, these energy systems, to get them off the ground, they require a lot of investment, grants, funding. So it's not to say that it hasn't or can't be done. But generally, if you're starting from the start, if you know you're master planning for a large redevelopment, like a lot of these strip malls, for example, are going to be redeveloped into densely populated, I'm going to call them mini cities, then the master planning at the onset should be looking at district energy. And then the other stakeholders can come in if it's of benefit to them.
Right. I guess, yeah, what I'm hearing is that it is possible. It's just that as of now, I guess in Ontario, it's not an example.
To my knowledge about investment on that level, not to my knowledge. That's not to say that it hasn't happened.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that. Next question. Oh, I don't think it's already for whoever asked this question, who is the EPC and the contractor for downtown project. The project is not yet there. So this is yet to be confirmed, right? Yes.
Yeah.
The next question is, were there any barriers in collaborating with the LDC to support the project in downtown Mississauga?
So probably in this case, Electra, are they talking about, I'm guessing?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Electra is a part of our working group, and so far they haven't expressed any concerns. And I will say that Electra has, a regulated arm and an unregulated arm. It's been more the unregulated arm that's been working with us on this project, even though both have been invited to the table.
Right, which it's a segue to the other questions. Are there any regulatory hurdles or legal considerations that need to be addressed with having a district energy in downtown or in any areas in municipality?
Well, I mean, as issues come up, or as we have, some questions that have been coming to the table, like we do check in with our legal team on that and make sure that things are okay. But what we've been trying to do is lay the groundwork for it. For example, making sure that we have the appropriate groundwork in our official plan, and we may look at things like zoning as well, that may help with district energy once we have it in place. So I think it's just ensuring that we have some enabling language in our official plan, and ensuring that we haven't come across barriers yet. But again, we're probably early on in the project, and we still may come across those barriers.
Right, it is going to be a learning process, and probably we can come back and review the movement of the project in like next year or further. I think this is two people asked this question, and I think now that's for you. What sort of energy metering technology is being proposed for district energy?
Yeah, so typically each building will have an energy transfer station where the district heating and cooling is exchanged with the building. So within that, there would be a ultrasonic type energy meter or mag meter type energy meter to meter the heating and cooling peak load and then energy, and then the customer is typically charged via a energy charge for how much energy they consume, and also a fixed capacity. So thermal energy metering.
Right, and because these are not new buildings, then it's not going to be submitted the individual units, I guess.
So currently, if it's, typically with, the district energy market in Ontario, individually metered buildings in a condominium would not take place. But sometimes in some buildings, you would have a large bulk meter at the energy transfer station. And then sometimes there are, sub meters on the building units as well. Not as much common here, but typically it's going to be in the basement energy transfer station.
Right.
So if it is an existing building being connected, you will have that energy at that point. That's not to say moving forward the market will trend that individual metering is how things might change, but typically that's not what we're seeing.
And continues, just to continue on that same question, will that be measured Canada approved, measurement Canada approved?
Yeah, so they are CSA standards. Currently, the Ontario market is non-regulated in district energy. BC market is regulated, but there's guiding principles that all the providers work to.
All right. Thank you for that. All right. Okay. Sorry, I missed here one question. For those of you who would like the contacts, they were shared on the slides, and we are going to share the slides with everyone together with the recording, so you'll be able to get the contact information. I don't know if we answered this question. Is Mississauga also looking to have a district loop where central plants can share chilled and hot water for economy of scales?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question. Is it in the idea of a central loop? I mean, we would think that in the downtown, obviously there's going to be a number of central plants that will be needed in order to serve the entire downtown. But Niall, maybe there's something I'm missing there in that question.
Yeah, if I understand the question, it's yes, the energy can be shared once the district heating and cooling network is established. So it goes back to data center produces heat, mixed use residential building needs heat, that can be utilized within the district energy system. So the energy can be shared.
Right. Okay, well, at this point, if someone wants to ask your question or have a comment, you can raise your hand. I think we addressed all of the questions that were written in the chat and the Q&A. Also, let me look at my questions, but I think they were addressed as well. I guess, what is the life cycle of district energy system?
So distribution pipe can be plus 50 years, geo exchange piping, HDP, DR11, plus 70 plus years. And typically the energy equipment starts getting replaced at the central plant 30 years. So there's systems with, district steam systems with 100-year-old pipe plus, but typically in around the 50 year is when you would start replacing the distribution, and then the energy equipment back at the central plant, in that 30 year range, depending on the specific piece of equipment.
Right. I don't know if you can speak about this, but who is the owner of the district energy in the Markham district energy? Is it?
Yeah, so Markham District Energy is municipally owned, a district energy system.
Oh, that's very interesting. And then, yeah, who is the city owner of the Lakeview District Energy? No, because I think, Teresa, you mentioned that they're developers who own.
Exactly. Yeah, it won't have any city ownership.
Right.
So yeah, it's privately owned.
Right. So for the, well, I guess we may, I have some more questions, but probably we can talk specifically in another webinar for each of the projects now that you already mentioned, because I'm curious when it's, and maybe we can invite also someone from Markham to speak of that district energy. Because I was curious, as a owners, are they covering then the maintenance? Because you mentioned that it's been for a while now working. So yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially a business that's revenue is generated from the customers buying the energy, and then capital is earmarked for ongoing O&M to the business. So it comes from the revenue. It's not a it's a positive business.
Right.
Oh. Yeah, it's one that we like to point to sometimes when we're trying to show that these can be successful, and that some of the dividends that were created by that system that went back to the city, that ended up at least 1 year decreasing city taxes. So that was seen as a real win. But yeah, the system is now generating revenue for the city. So that 100% ownership is helpful.
Yeah, and we know that there are not many avenues where city can be obtaining funding and money. So I guess it's a good one. For the Teresa, you mentioned that it's a positive business case, and then the price was significantly high for 400 million, I think. But what is the time? Speaking about the positive, like what's the return of investment as a period, like when it's expected to be paid off?
I might turn to Niall for that one, as he put together that business case for us.
Yeah,
putting you on the spot there.
It's so the IRR is positive throughout the light at the 20-year period. So it takes a while for it to become positive. But again, this business case was based upon having no grants or funding mechanisms as it done conservatively. And as we know, there's a lot of green granting available, which will enhance the business case. And then we're hoping to dive deeper into that in the next phase. So again, conservative business case that we did not allow for any external funding grants. So low carbon economy funding, Canadian Infrastructure Bank, low cost funding, all of these FCM, they have to go together in order to develop these low carbon district energy systems. And that's what we'll get at in the next phase of the project.
Right, thanks for that. I see that there is some appetite, and I just want to confirm with our audience. Please raise your hand or just put in the chat if you're interested in reviewing in a little bit more details of the other district energies that Niall spoke in the beginning, so that if there is enough interest, we can pull up in another. Yes, please. Okay, thank you on confirming that. We can plan another one so we can continue the conversation, because we're at the end of this 1 hour webinar, and I want to thank you very much, Teresa and Niall, for being with us in this 1 hour, presenting the work that it's done thus far. and answering all the questions. And I see a lot of yeses, so okay, we'll continue the conversation and probably invite again Niall for to speak a little bit more for the other district energy projects that are happening in Ontario as well. With this, I want to thank our presenters and everyone on the call. Enjoy for the rest of the day and stay tuned for more of our upcoming webinars.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.